In 2008, Samsung's smartphone manufacturing facilities were scattered throughout mainland China. Just 15 years later, those factories have disappeared, and nearly all of them have relocated to Southeast Asia.
It may have given Samsung a competitive advantage to go to Vietnam first.
But Apple was on its heels. Over the last few years, the tech giant started making similar moves to diversify its operations. Here's a closer look at how Samsung and Apple's manufacturing moves from China. Samsung set up a plant in the Bac Ninh region of Vietnam to reduce its dependence on China. Tech industry analysts say it was a forward-thinking move for the South Korean company.
They benefit in a lot of ways. They benefit from cheaper labor in some of these countries that they're moving to. They benefit from being insulated from some of the geopolitical tensions that come with operating in China and continuing to expand in China. They also benefit from being insulated from the kinds of supply chain shocks that we saw during the COVID lockdowns in China and the supply chain disruptions that resulted from that.
Over the next decade, rising labor and operating costs in China made it difficult for Samsung to produce its phones cheaply. That, coupled with intensifying competition from domestic smartphone rivals, led Samsung's market share in China to plummet. Meanwhile, the company was slowly moving its smartphone operations out of the country. Since 2013, the number of Samsung employees in China has fallen by 70%. Samsung still kept significant manufacturing centers in China, including for its expansive memory chip business. By 2019, it had
shut its last phone factory in the world's biggest smartphone market.
1 year later, the pandemic hit, propelling tech companies like Apple to make similar moves away from China. Apple's plans gained even more momentum in late 2022 after violent protests rocked the company's largest iPhone manufacturing plant in Zhengzhou, China. According to analysts and people in the company's supply chain, Apple no longer feels comfortable having so much of its business tied up in one place. While different events first propelled Samsung and Apple out of China, their new supply chain strategies focus on the same places: India and Vietnam. Samsung pays about 10% corporate income tax in Vietnam versus China's standard 25% rate. It now produces half of its smartphones there. Apple also has operations in Vietnam. The company started producing its watches in the country and moved some iPad manufacturing there too. In Apple's most recent list of its top 200 suppliers, 25 were in Vietnam. That's 25% higher than 4 years ago. Then there's India. Around 20 to 30% of all of Samsung's smartphones are now manufactured there, according to Morgan Stanley. In a recent earnings call, CEO Tim Cook said,
India is an incredibly exciting market. It's a major focus for us.
But even as Apple and Samsung spend billions to move away from China, the manufacturers may still depend on suppliers there.